Hey guys, Daddy-O here from Dadventure TV. I had the opportunity to rent a Specialized ST, that's the short travel, on 27.5. This past weekend when I was down in Florida, I rode Alafia River State Park. Pretty cool place. Unfortunately, I forgot my GoPro, so I don't have any trail footage, although I will put up a talking review of it. It is definitely a cool place if you're down there and you get a chance to ride it. Um, Also put up a review on single tracks. But with regard to the Stumpy ST, I had it for about 3 hours or so, so I got a decent chance to ride it. The Stumpy ST is a 120 millimeter rear suspension, 130 millimeter fork. It's an aluminum frame. Pretty cheap build. It comes in about $1,900, which is pretty nice in the pocketbook. Um, it doesn't have the fanciest shocks or brakes and things, but it had a NX Eagle drivetrain, which was cool. Um, and overall, I thought it was a decent little bike. There are a couple things, though, that I would point out. So first thing about it is it does not come with a dropper post. Uh, I'm not really sure why, because these 120, 130 mil bikes are definitely trail bikes, and they should have droppers. Without the dropper, it really limits what I think the average rider, maybe above average rider, but those of us who are still sort of weekend warriors at this can do, because with that seat up, it really just gets in the way a lot of being able to drop, being able to do jumps, and being able to do some of the more technical features, especially some of the really steep descents. Um, I am not sure what the ability is to change the seat post to a dropper post purchase. I did see something online which mentioned that the seat tube has a um, weird diameter that might be difficult to find dropper posts for. I don't know. I didn't really look into it to either confirm or deny it. But if you're looking at the bike and you're thinking, well, I'll put the dropper post in after I get it, save up some money, that makes a lot of sense. Just make sure you do your research to make sure that you can put one in. I also don't know if it's routed for an internal dropper, or if you'd have to get an external, or perhaps one of these new wireless droppers which are coming out. Um, that to me is really a sort of a deal killer just over in general on the bike. Um, I would definitely want a dropper on it, and I think that spending a little bit extra if they have a next step up that has the dropper seat post probably would be money well spent, especially if you can't replace the seat post with a dropper post purchase. Um, but moving on from the dropper, what I'll say, the next thing I noticed probably about the bike is that it is a little shorter feeling in reach. The reach numbers are 490 millimeters, which is the same as on my Bronson, but it felt a little bit. It felt like a little bit shorter cockpit. Part of it might be because it has a slightly steeper seat angle. So the seat angle is 76 something. So it's about a degree steeper than what's on my Bronson. Also, the wheelbase on the bike is a little bit shorter than what's on the Bronson. My Bronson is 1250. The wheelbase on this is 1230. So it's almost an inch shorter wheelbase, and I think that all probably contributes to the bike feeling a little bit shorter. Now, that's not a knock on the bike. It's just something that, if you're looking at the bike, I think you should know going in, is that it does feel a little bit shorter. Because of the fact that it's a slightly shorter feeling bike, it handles really well. It handles in the tights and the twisties. It's super nimble, easy to turn, get around 90-degree switchbacks. If you are taking the bike into some more gnarly type terrain, high speed, that's where you'll notice the bike will get bounced around a little bit more because of that shorter wheelbase. Also, when you get on the really steeps, especially if you're on a fairly steep and then there's a drop, um, that's again where you'll notice that shorter cockpit feeling, and I think also the steeper seat tube angle plays a part of that as well. You feel a little bit more kind of forward on the bike. Um, the other thing I noticed was the bottom bracket. While it on paper says that it's a 325 millimeter bottom bracket, which is pretty low, it didn't feel super low on the trail. I wasn't getting a lot of pedal strikes. I wasn't getting a lot of bottom bracket hits. There wasn't a lot of gnar on the trail because it's Florida, but there were some places where I had to pedal through roots and some rocks, so the bike was bobbing. The suspension was working as I was pedaling through it, and during those times, I really didn't get any pedal strikes or bottom bracket hits. So it felt like it was at a really nice level, yet I still felt like I was in the bike enough and it was low enough when going around some of the turns. There's a huge wooden berm on, I think it's North Creek. It's an S berm. The first turn is a right-hander, really big berm, and then the second turn is a left-hander, shorter berm with a jump at the end. And both of those, the bike felt really nice and low going around the turns, and I didn't feel like on top of the bike or that it was particularly top heavy. So I liked that feeling of the bike. I will say that it's a really good pedaler. Man, it just goes up stuff. It pedals on flat really well. I really liked the way it pedaled. I was getting a bit of pedal kickback when I would hit some of the bigger gnar. Also, when I would when I would drop off of some of the bigger drops. I wasn't doing anything really big because that seat post was really limiting me. But I dropped off of a 6-footer roughly at one point and came down and I think I bottomed it out, and then it kind of kicked my feet off of the pedals. The pedals weren't real great though either. This was a rental. It had these plastic type pedals with the cleats being plastic instead of screws that weren't really doing a great job of gripping to my shoes. So that could have been part of it too. A better pedal might help reduce that. But I got the feeling when I noticed, because I started paying attention to it once I started to notice it, I think it's more just the way the suspension is laid out. I think it does, when you hit more flat-edged, larger rocks and things, it seems like it sends some pedal kickback through the drivetrain. So it's something just to be aware of. To me, it wasn't anything that was totally terrible or that would prevent me from buying the bike. For what I think this bike is really designed for is somebody who wants a bike that's primarily going to be a pedaling bike. You want it, most of the time you're going to be using it for pedaling relatively flatter, rollier kind of flow type trails, but still have the capability to handle some gnar when you get into it, to handle some of the mid-sized drops, and to be sort of an all-round trail bike, but not sort of bomber bruiser kind of bike. And for that kind of riding, the minimal kind of pedal kickback that you get, I don't think is going to be an issue. What will be an issue, though, is definitely that dropper seat post. I do, like I say, highly recommend that either you look into being, if you're going to buy this bike, make sure that you're able to replace the seat post with a dropper, or go up a level and get one that has a dropper on it. But otherwise, and I wouldn't buy this bike if I were going to be really bombing a lot of gnar all the time and really dropping off of any drops or jumps more than kind of roller jumps and drops maybe more than three or 4 feet. For that, I probably go up to the longer travel Stumpy, which has the 150 mil travel, which I haven't demoed. But I think this bike would be a little bit underpowered for that kind of riding. But it's a great bike for pedaling around and still being capable of handling some of the gnar and some of the smaller stuff when you want to do it. So that's it. I didn't get a chance to ride it too much, and it was a little bit of a beat up rental. So wasn't probably it wasn't the one that I'm sure Specialized would give out if they were giving a demo day. But I got a pretty good feel for it. So it's a great bike if it fits kind of what you're looking for. I would say don't get it in over its head. If you're looking for a big bomber, I don't think this would be it. You're probably looking for something with more travel, more suspension, slightly longer wheelbase, and slightly longer feeling reach at any rate, even if the numbers aren't necessarily any longer. So that's it from here. If you get it, hope you love it and enjoy it, and I'll keep riding. I'll see you out there on the trails.